Hello, I'm Barb Owen of HowToGetCreative.com, and thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Tips and Tricks. This week on the HowToGetCreative.com website, I have a whole project using Paperclay, and I thought you might like to see what it looks like. So you'll know why we're going to talk about Paperclay. Now, this little figure is based on some kid art. She's not finished yet. And she's not quite dry. She's getting close. But this is the project that you'll see on the website, which made me think that perhaps we needed to do a few little tips and tricks about working with paper clay. Now, before I go there, I need to tell you that I am not a clay artist. I'm a clay player, shall we say. I just experiment and play with whether it's air dry clay or polymer clay. I just play with it because I think it's a fun medium to use. And my philosophy about anything that I don't understand is to think, I wonder what would happen if. And then I just play and see what the results are. Sometimes I love the results and sometimes not so much. But you know, in the process, I've had a good time. So this is Paperclay. And Paperclay is one of the air dry clays that's commonly available. And there are lots of different brands of air dry clays, and they all have different properties and they all have different textures. And so you just got to get some and play with it and just see what you think. When you open your container of Paperclay and you get some of it out, it's very soft. When it is brand new, straight out of the package, it's brand new, it's very malleable, it's nice and moist, and it's great. And so I just love, honestly, I love working with this stuff. It feels so nice. Kind of reminds you of the old Play-Doh, you know, crack open a new container of Play-Doh, kids clay, or a new batch of clay. I have a great recipe for kids clay. I'm going to have to put that on the blog so you can go over and get that. I used to make it for my son, and oh, he would spend hours and hours and hours playing with the homemade clay. Anyway, I digress. So you get this out of the package, and it is super to work with. But as soon as you crack open this package, it starts drying. So a couple things that I would encourage you to do when you're working with this. One, keep a plastic bag, and it needs to be one that's pretty airtight, and put a pretty damp paper towel in the plastic bag. Then as you're working with the clay, only get out as much as you think you're going to use for the next few minutes. Put the paper clay, wrap it back up, stick it back in your bag, seal the bag so it's got, seal out as much air as you can, which is a pain to have to do this every time you need to get clay out. However, you'll be glad you did. So it's got the paper towel in there. Then what I did is I would pinch off the piece I'm going to work with, and I would just stick the other piece under the bag so it would kind of help protect it until I was ready to use it. So then knead the clay and shape it and do whatever you need to do. It immediately starts getting all over your hands, and so that's some good fun right there. And then just shape it and play with it and do whatever you need to do. So that's how you work with it. You can roll it out. You can do, hand form it as I did with this little figure. It's all good, whatever you want to do. So just stick it under there for now. Some of the tools that I was working with, not conventional tools, by the way. These are the Martha Stewart Stylus tools, and I found these were really good for shaping some of the things that I needed to shape. They're different size tips, and I just found them very handy to use with the paper clay. Another thing that I used a lot to scoot and shape things was the Martha Stewart craft knife. It doesn't have to be Martha Stewart's brand, but this happens to be the one that I have. And I use that a lot. I was surprised at how much I used that. It seems like a lot of the traditional clay shaping tools I found to be bulky and difficult to work with because I was working with something so small. Another thing that you might be using when you're working with clay, and probably I use this more of the time with polymer clay than with the air dry clay. Where I use this with the air dry clay is I would build my little figure on top of this thing, which is a tile. It's actually a tile left over from a bathroom wall type tiles, but it's ceramic. And when my figure would sit on there, sometimes it would get stuck because the clay is wet and kind of sticks to the surface. So I would use this, which is called a tissue blade, and I would just scoot it underneath the whole little thing to lift her up. And that worked really well. Now, this is like a big razor blade. It's just a big razor blade. It's real sharp on one side, and it's not sharp on the other side. So when you're going to pick this thing up, you want to be able to pick it up by the side that's not sharp. Yes. So you'll notice that mine has a piece of just painter's tape on it, so that when I pick it up, I know which side to get a hold of. It just saves you a lot of possibly cutting yourself. Another thing that really helps too is to have a little cup, just a little cup, and I put a small amount of water in it, because the more water you have in it, the further it can go when it tips over, and invariably it will tip over. So just a little bit of water and just a plain old paintbrush, and then that you can use that to smooth out some of the cracks and crevices in the paper clay, because as it starts to dry, it starts to crack. So that was, and as I said, I'm not an expert at this. I just am telling you the things that I found that I really like and the way it works well for me. So I did that, and I got most of the cracks and crevices out of the clay as I was working by simply using a paintbrush and some water. All right, now let's say your whole session of working with paper clay is finished. However, you have a whole bunch of paper clay left, like I have here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take it out of this bag, because this bag with the damp paper towel in it for me is just a temporary thing. And I'm going to put this wad of paper clay back in here and just kind of smush it all down. Okay, and then I'm going to fold the end over as much as possible. All right, now I don't know whether you have one of these gizmos and gadgets, but it's pretty darn cool, I have to say. And it is called a FoodSaver, and it's meant to use in your kitchen. But who wants to just keep tools in the kitchen? You know what I mean? So it's this gadget right here, and it's meant to put food inside to save the food and keep it fresher longer. Let's move some stuff out of the way here so I can show you how it works. So you can get the bags different ways. The way that I have these is on a roll, and so you just cut off the amount that you need, and then you seal one end of it, which is what I've done right here. So I've sealed one end of the tube, the plastic tube that I cut off, and then I stick the paper clay in here like this, and then you open this up, and it's going to get a little noisy, but you know, c'est la vie. And you put it down in the tray. Now, you know, there are different brands of these, and so you're going to have to see, if you have one, how it works and use it accordingly. But I fastened the lid down, or the upper piece, fasten that down, and then push this. And as soon as that light comes on, I can take it out. Oh, yeah, I didn't go long enough. Do it again. Do over. Okay. You have to wait until the light goes off with this one. And then you have to follow the instructions. And then there's a line right across here, and that has sealed, and it's pulled all the air out of this little package. Hopefully you can see that. It's sealed all the way around it. It's pulled all of the air out of it, and this is the sealing area right up here. This line right here, that's where it sealed it. So on this particular machine, you have to go until it actually stops. So it pulls the air out, and then it seals it, and then you're done. So the cool part about this is that now this is sealed, and it's pulled as much air out of this as it possibly can. So that is a great thing. Then Now, I'm not going to promise you that the clay is going to last forever in this package like this, but it's going to last a whole lot longer than if you just put it in a zip type plastic bag. I mean, this is going to last for quite a while, but this is going to last a lot longer. That's been my experience so far. Well, what if you don't have a machine like that? Well, then use plastic wrap. You know, fold the end over, wrap it in plastic wrap several times, put it in a plastic bag that you can seal the air out of as much as you can, and that will do a pretty good job for you too. So hopefully that'll give you a couple of ideas about working with paper clay and other air dry clays. And I thank you for joining me today on this episode of Tips and Tricks. I hope to see you on Friday over at the live stream. You'll find the link in the description below. And I will see you next time on the next episode. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.